Pleasure to be with you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what's called the violet consuming flame. It sounds very impressive, but really it's around you all the time. Violet is the most purifying quality of light, but it's contained in white light. We just don't see it because the white is made up of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, Now, when you see the rainbow, you can see some violet. That's because the little drops of water are like prisms, millions of little prisms. So if you hold a prism up to a beam of light, then you will see all the colors that are in the white light, including the violet. So the violet is the most purifying quality that dissolves and consumes negative energy, thought forms, things like that. But it's really there all the time. It's like invoking oxygen. How do I get it? Well, it's around you. The plants are giving it off,
So it's not like we're generating it. The violet is always there.
Yeah. So what happens actually when you meditate, the violet comes in automatically. You're increasing the vibration. As you do that, the quality violet comes out more. So I've seen in groups of people come to see me and they feel the presence of an ascended master. Now, ascended master is just another term for a bodhisattva or an enlightened being who's on a higher plane. These elder brothers like Jesus, and Buddha and Mother Mary, these great beings that were once on the earth that are now helping us. When they start to come close, people feel that energy and the room sort of fills with this violet. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes not. It depends on the individual. I mean, generally when we're meditating, our eyes are closed, but sometimes I take a peek and I see this beautiful violet in the room, Not all the time, but sometimes. So that's a very natural way to generate violet. So when you're meditating, that violet quality is being generated, and that's dissolving what the Tibetans call kleshas, or maybe it's the Hindus. The kleshas are the magnetic imprints of actions that we did in past lives that are still with us, like make up some of our personality. So when you're meditating, that violet is dissolving those negative qualities. So it's very, very healing and purifying to think of that. And of course, the more you think of the color violet, the more you invoke it, including, wearing violet clothes or having amethysts around you. A lot of people, especially in Mount Shasta, they all have the amethyst pendant, amethyst rings. I have it's a glass ball of amethyst, and when the sun hits it, it gives off this beautiful violet. So that's kind of a reminder, Now there's another way also to invoke this violet light. Some people are familiar with the Tibetan Buddhist tantric practice of the medicine Buddha, where the medicine Buddha, you see him as made of lapis lazuli, blue. And they use the blue light, they invoke the blue light. So now I know very few people have actually seen that blue light, but you imagine it. You imagine that the Buddha is in front of you and he's made of lapis lazuli, and these rays of blue light are going out, and that's very, very purifying. Now, you may not see that. Some people have a hard time visualizing. They say, I can't do that. Then I say, well, ask the masters to help you. I say, in fact, that's one of the Tibetan Buddhists. When you do this ritual, medicine Buddha, you say, I call on all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to amplify my prayer and to make this real. So Saint Germain is the Lord of the violet ray. So I ask him to make this violet fire real. I say, I call on the violet consuming flame to blaze forth through Washington, D.C., dissolve and consume all negative energy, you know? Well, I don't see that happening right now, but I can imagine Saint Germain and the angels of the violet fire in a big ring around the city of Washington, pouring beams of light, violet light, from the palms of their hands, from their third eye, down into the city. You know, one person can change the course of history. So if you get 100 people, 108 people, all asking Saint Germain and the angels of the violet flame to send the violet fire someplace, that's going to be very powerful.
Wow.
And don't be disappointed if you don't actually see it, but you can imagine it, or just simply asking the masters who are in charge of that ray to do it with a sincere heart is invoking it, you know.
Can I ask you, Peter, your first experience and how you first got to know of violet flame, how you first connected with the energy of Saint Germain, and also tell people a little bit about Saint Germain? I think it'll be great for them to have a little sense of context.
Well, I was a guest of the Theosophical Society in India, Adayar, in 1970, 71, I guess. And I started to read this book called Unveiled Mysteries, which is about a man, Godfrey Ray King, met Saint Germain on the slopes of the Mount Shasta. This is, when I say ascended master, this is someone who was on the earth in a physical body at one time, and then raised a vibratory rate into a higher dimension. You know, this is well known in Tibet. People can even dissolve the physical body. You know, the story of Jesus, how he raised a vibratory weight and went up into heaven. You know, some people ascend out of the physical body dies, but from the subtle body, they ascend to a higher frequency, you know. So anyway, I started to read this book, but it didn't mean too much to me at the time. It was talking about jewels and, you know, things like that. And I thought, then I was in the renunciation phase, you know, like a sadhu, we should give up all material things, attachments and stuff. But then I eventually, well, what happened is I came back from India, and I didn't really want to be on the earth anymore. I felt like I finished my work here. Well, not even work. I just felt like I was living for samsara the first, you know, 25 years of my life, just pursuing wine, women, and song, you know, and fast cars and parties. And those things didn't make me happy. I tried them all, and nothing really made me happy. And in India, in the Himalayas, I experienced a great peace and joy and bliss of the higher worlds, you know. So when I came back to the US and everybody is pursuing samsara, you know, I was staying in Berkeley, and I said, I don't want to be here anymore. I stayed with the yogi in the Himalayas, and he was getting ready to consciously leave his body. So I went out to Muir Woods, which is this redwood forest near San Francisco, and I prayed. I'm asking permission to leave my body, but I never experienced any of these ascended masters. But I thought, well, I should ask somebody for permission. This is a big deal, you know. So I named everybody I could think of, you know, Jesus and Mary and Kuan Yin and Buddha and you name it. I thought every yogi I could think of. And then I was doing this Vipassana meditation, which was with the eyes open, just looking down at the forest. And it was pouring rain. So I got into a redwood tree that was hollow to get out of the rain. And I had my eyes slightly open. And suddenly there was a man standing in front of me. I just saw these 2 feet. And I didn't hear him come any closer. I mean, I didn't hear anybody walking up. You would, if you're in the forest, you would hear the sticks breaking and things like that. There was nobody walking toward me. It's just, there was nobody there. The next minute, there was somebody there. and he was wearing blue jeans, looked just like somebody hiking in the woods, young guy in his 20s or something. And he said, "Peter, I am the part of the Godhead that has been sent to answer your prayer." And I thought, boy, this is the first time I've ever had a prayer answered. I used to pray a lot, and I didn't believe in God because none of my prayers were answered, And he said, "You can leave the earth now if you want, but I want to show you, and I will help you, but I want to show you something first, and then you give me your answer." So he touched me on the third eye, took me out of my body, and then I looked back, there was my physical body sitting in the tree, and I'm in another body. It looked just like the physical body. He put his arm around me, and he took me up off the earth. We went to this world where the beings existed as balls of light, emanating rainbow colors, And it's like a little bit like there's a painting on the wall back there. I don't know if you can see it, but
I can see it.
Yeah, it's like what our higher bodies, what the Tibetans call the Dharmakaya. That we have like basically three bodies, the physical
Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, and
the
Dharmakaya.
Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya is like your Buddha body or your Christ self, whatever you want to call it. In India, they would call it the Atman.
Yeah.
So this is a ball of light, and it just emanates these beautiful rainbow colors. And what the ascension is when your lower bodies merge with the higher body. All of the human stuff is gone, and then you're just a God being from then on, So that ball of light is really God. I mean, what Para Brahman, if you take all of the, or Param Atman, all the Atmans together, Param Atman, you say, well, that's the totality of God, but so each of us has our own God presence, and that's what sustains us. That presence sends a beam of light down through the top of the head, and it's anchored near the heart, behind the sternum, what they call the Jyoti, the sacred flame. And when we meditate, that gets stronger, and that's where you get your guidance from that feeling in there. We call it the heart, but it's not really the physical heart. But when you're doing something right, that feels good. That light expands. Like when you feel love, that light expands. When you start to go in the wrong direction, that light shrinks, or if you're thinking of telling a lie, that light shrinks. So
do even non-living things have an Atman, or only do living things have an Atman?
Well, I think dogs, I just saw a nature spirit in a tree. It was beautiful. Now, it was like a God being, Looked like a little girl about 6 years old inside this tree. It happened because I was tying a rope around this tree, and I had to put my arms around the trunk. And I felt this love, and I said, "Where's that love coming from?" And here was this little girl about 6 years old, but like an angel, and she said, I have a friend lives next door, and he's cutting down a lot of trees with a chainsaw, it's to protect his house from forest fires, so he's justified in it. But she said, but he didn't think about the trees before he cut them down. So she said, "I'm glad you're not like him. You're not going to cut me down, And she was just very loving, and just said, "I love you, and I'm glad you respect me," and so on like that, In fact, it's very funny because I was writing about this, and I was writing about this 2 days ago, and I heard her, I felt her. She said, "Go get the neighbor. I want to talk to him," And I thought, oh, this is really strange because I'm going to call somebody up and say, a tree just told me the tree wants to talk to you, So, but he's a spiritual guy, very receptive. He came over and we talked to the tree. I thanked it for the shade in the summer and the acorns for the deer and the squirrels to eat and all that, and that gives off oxygen so he can breathe. And then we gave it some chocolate. They say the trees like chocolate or, anything that means something to you, like the Native Americans would give tobacco or something. Nice. So we we gave it some chocolate, and then we did the Gayatri mantra, so on.
Very nice.
So anyway,
So maybe even non-living things have a spirit aspect. They may not have a soul as such,
yeah,
but they have like a
yeah.
spiritual component, perhaps.
Yeah, and animals, you
Yeah.
know, they have a more beyond the physical body. There is a higher body that they have. You know, they say that if you really love a pet that you have, then you give it individuality. That otherwise, when it dies, it merges like with the group soul kind of thing. But you know, really, we should treat everything as though it's alive, even the chairs. You know,
Right.
I mean, because it's all us. Everything is a part of universal consciousness, you know.
Wow.
So like
So
our
was that
yeah,
person you met in the forest, was that Saint Germain, or was that
yeah.
a representation of Saint Germain?
No, that was not a fantasy. That was not my projection or something, because you know, well, anyway, he took me up to this realm
Yeah.
where these beings were these balls of light, and there was
Yeah.
just bliss there, you know. And I said, this is it. This is where I want to stay. And he said, well, then I heard this crying coming from someplace.
Uh-huh.
And it got louder and louder, and it was very annoying, you know, because I was feeling the bliss, and then who was crying, you know? So I looked down, and I could see the earth beneath me like a blue ball, like that. And then I realized the suffering was coming from the earth, you know?
Wow.
He said, the masters hear this wailing all the time.
Mm.
Every bit of suffering, all the crying to God, the masters hear every bit of it, every prayer, all the suffering. And at that point, there was no thought. I just said, I want to go back and help people, you know. And he said, you could have stayed here for a kalpa, you know, in bliss, you know.
Yeah.
But he said, we're closely together because you made this choice to go back. So what I realized later was that was a bodhisattva vow, you know?
Yes, yes.
If they offer you liberation and you choose to stay for the benefit of others. And you know, so the next thing I knew, I was back in my body in Muir Woods. Now, this man in front of me, I realize now this is not an ordinary person.
Used
So
to
he
live.
said, now I will show you who I am. And he changed in front of me into this master wearing a white robe. Now, this did not appear etheric. This was, to me, totally physical. And then, well, he said, go to Mount Shasta. The first person you meet there will tell you what to do next, you know. So then he disappeared. And I got in my car, drove to Mount Shasta. I was so energized. It was amazing. And so I went to a place to have breakfast in town, and this young man came up to me and he said, you're supposed to see this lady by the name of Pearl. And I thought, well, I was told to do what the first person told me to do. So I called up Pearl, and she said, come right up. And I went to her house. She was this sweet little old lady, like grandmother type, you know. She looked a little like Yoda from Star Wars, you know.
You've written a book about her, yes.
Yeah, Lady Master Pearl.
Yeah.
And she said, I've been expecting you.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, how could you be expecting me? She said, the Master Saint Germain came this morning and said he was sending you to see me.
Incredible.
And then she said, what brought you here? And I said, well, I met this man in Muir Woods. She said, who do you think that was? And I said, well, I saw his picture in Unveiled Mysteries. I know that was Saint Germain, you know.
Wow.
And she said, he's teaching you right now. And I said, but I don't hear anything. Would you channel the message? And she said, no, if I channel the message, that would weaken you.
Yeah.
He's transmitting it to you energetically to your higher mental body.
Beautiful.
And you will get it when the time is right. It will filter down to you, you know, but you will perceive it as intuition, you know. She said, you have to learn to get this inside, because if every time you need to know something, you come to me, that's not going to make you a master, you know? It's better even to like make a mistake, but do it from your own sincere effort, you know?
True.
So you learn to get that guidance from meditating on the flame in your heart, you know, and expanding it. Now, Saint Germain gives that meditation in the first chapter of Unveiled Mysteries.
Can I just briefly
So
share? Can I just briefly
yeah.
share that I lived as a monk for some time in Sri Lanka and Thailand, and
Mm.
I'm not even sure how now, but at some point in my practice, I was going through a lot of doubt, and I wasn't sure if I was doing the right practice. I wasn't sure that I was worthy enough. I wasn't sure that I was in the right place, and I was just going through a lot of confusion. And I don't remember exactly how now, but somehow the violet flame. I'm forgetting if it was some book or someone mentioned it. But I began doing this violet flame practice, and I began just burning everything, all my thoughts, all my problems, all my worries, everything into the violet fire.
Mm.
And I began feeling this immense clarity coming. And I would write down a question, and I would pause, and I would just enter this violet flame, and then very beautiful, clear answers would come.
Nice.
And I felt the presence of Mahavatar Babaji at that time, and a lot of
Ah.
support and guidance from him. And that really eased my process from feeling very, very kind of stuck and very obstructed and a lot of self judgment also. And I began to just see it slowly metamorphose, and led me from that step by step over the
Mhm.
next couple of years to eventually leaving the
Mhm.
monastic life in a very smooth way, in a very beautiful way, and then to doing what I do now, which is helping people connect with their own inner wisdom and their own inner light.
Nice.
So I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you're helping a lot of people, you know, in a very grounded way, and that's good, you know.
So I have a
Yeah.
question for you. There are so many ascended masters. How does one know? Does one just pray and say, may the right ascended master guide me? Or what is there a way that you find the right teacher for you, or the right guidance for you?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do that. I say, I am the presence of the ascended host of light. I mean, you can read a little bit about them. Like a lot of people in the software, like Silicon Valley, I say you should think of Master Hilarion. He's like technology guru, you know? And, uh, and then there's one of the masters, Paul, who was an artist and so on. But they say a call to any of the masters is a call to all of them, you know, so the
I
right
see.
one will come. And, but, what they really want is connect with your ascended self, so I
Yeah.
can say, I am the presence of my ascended master self right now. I am the presence of ascended master Peter Mount Shasta. Or I am the
That's a
presence.
powerful one. Can we just
Yeah,
say that 3 times? I think even the people. So basically, we say, "I am the presence of my ascended master self."
ascended
Is that what
master
we say?
self. Yeah. Right. I am the presence of my ascended master self
I
right
am the
here
presence of
and
my
now.
ascended master self right here and now. I am the
Yeah.
presence of my ascended master self right here and now. I am the presence of my ascended master self right here and now. What a powerful thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah. You could to yourself, I am the presence of ascended master Nithya Shanti, Wow.
Mm.
Boom. I mean,
Actually, many
sort of
years
go
back,
around.
I was doing all
Yeah.
these mantras, and
Yeah.
surprisingly, my own name came up as a mantra, and I began saying Om Shri Nithya Shanti Namaha, or something like that. It's like, wow, I'm chanting my own name as a mantra. And then
That's
I
great.
realized that because since time is an illusion, a part of me is already an ascended master. A part of me is already fully realized, and that part
Yeah.
of me is available to support and clarify and illuminate the path right away. So it really
Yeah.
felt powerful to do that.
That's good. Well, the funny thing is everybody really is enlightened, except they don't think so. They keep the mind keeps focusing on all these other limitations, so as long as it identifies with thoughts and feelings, then it's not enlightened, but the basic nature is already enlightened. So if we can just slow down the mind, then you realize you are a Buddha or you are an ascended master, so going back to the violet flame, how you said you burnt up a lot of conditions with that, you know. I know some healers, people do body work, you know, and when they work on a body, there's some pain somewhere, they draw the negative condition out. Then they visualize there's like a violet fire coming up from the floor, and they throw it into the violet fire, you know. What I used to do was just like I'd hold somebody's feet. They were on the bodywork table, hold their feet and imagine that they were made of amethyst, you know.
Wow.
Then the light would come in, you know. The other thing is that that light from the I am presence, it comes down through the top of the head into the heart, but there's also a tube of light around you. So you can say, I am the presence blazing the violet consuming flame up, in, around, and through me, and through my tube of light, you know. So if you go into a negative condition, like when I go into a movie theater, you know, where they've been having horror movies for a week, I imagine that the whole atmosphere is filled with violet light, you know. And
Can we say it one more time? How does it go? I
I
am the.
am the presence blazing the violet consuming flame up, in, around, and through me, and through my tube of light. It goes
I'm the
from beneath,
presence blazing the violet all-consuming flame
up,
up,
in, yeah,
in, and through and around me
yeah.
into this, into the tube of light. Everything into the tube of light.
Dissolving and dissolving and consuming all negative conditions, you know.
Dissolving and consuming all negative conditions.
You know, I'll tell you a story. It's not, you know, there's many ways to say this. The important thing is the sincerity. There was a lady visited Pearl, and she heard about the violet fire, and then she went to San Francisco, and she stayed in a motel room that was in a kind of, I guess, bad part of town or something. And she opened the door to her room, and it was dark, and she heard two voices, or she heard a voice inside, let's get her, talking to somebody else, you know. But she knew that these were like disembodied spirits, you know, negative entities or something. And then she remembered what Pearl said, but she couldn't remember the affirmation exactly, you know. So she just said, purple light, come forth. And it dissolved them. She said she saw the room kind of flash with this violet light. Then she went in, nobody ever bothered her, you know, got rid of it. Yeah.
You know, I had a similar experience. One of the first times I was teaching after I came back from my monastic life, we were doing it in this house that was a few hundred years, maybe 150 years old. And the people who lived in that house had invited me. And, you know, they said that there are some rooms in this house where we have funny experiences. We feel like someone's touching our feet or someone's pulling on our blankets. And we don't know what's going on, but there's something funny going on here. So anyway, we went ahead. So they said, what should we do about that? I said, well, don't try to resist it. Invite those presences to also join us in what we're doing. And let them also benefit from what's happening here. So we had a 2-day, what I call a joy shop. And it was all about radiating love and radiating good wishes. And we were using the pink light, radiating pure love, like rose quartz. And at the end of it, she has a friend who's a psychic. And her friend told her that, and her friend lives in Delhi, which is like far away. We were in Pune and this was in Delhi. She said, what are you doing in your house? She's saying, nothing. We had a 2-day session. She said, your house is surrounded by thick, leathery golden light. And it is completely cleansed. I don't know what's been going on in your house, but I'm getting it in my meditation. And so that was very beautiful to hear that.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, once I used the blue flame, which is it's a little different than the violet. It's more forceful, you know? The violet is more transmuting. I was staying in a house like that. I was the only one in the house, and I saw like someone was pulling on the bed sheets, you know? Walk, and I started decreeing like crazy. I call on Archangel Michael, Sword of Blue Flame, Angels of Blue Lightning. I stayed up half the night calling on this blue lightning and the violet flame. And I came back a week later and the house was gone. They said the day after you left, it burnt to the ground, you know?
Oh my goodness.
And then they had even bulldozed the ashes into the foundation, leveled it out. You would not know a house was ever there.
That's how powerful
It-
these lights can be. These flames can be amazing.
yeah. You see,
Do
it
all
wasn't just that one. There was a lot of that place was the focus of negative energy. It needed to be removed, you know?
So do all colors have their own spiritual dimension, or only certain colors like blue and violet? Do all colors have a certain spiritual vibration that
Oh
is
yeah,
beneficial?
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Like you said, pink or gold with the pink. Gold is sort of like wisdom, and I know some people on the spiritual path don't like red, but red is the Mars energy. Our blood is red. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
true. Yeah.
It's negative only if you qualify it as negative, if you have fear. But sometimes I'm told wear some red. It's usually not bright red, but a little red. Like the curtain behind you is more
Yeah.
like orange red. you know?
Yeah.
So all the colors have some significance. I would say I would say in general to avoid black if you can. I know it's the fashionable thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they say light attracts light, dark attracts dark. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And so yeah, it doesn't mean freak out if somebody's wearing black, but from my own personal, I was told not to wear black.
I get it. And
So
so basically, what I'm understanding is if you look at it in terms of frequency, everything is frequency, everything is energy. And what we're doing
mm,
is, like you said, ascended masters are raising their frequency to the point where they're moving into another dimension.
yeah.
So, along with the violet flame, is there anything else that you can offer us that will help us on a day-to-day level to raise our frequency, raise our vibration?
Well, there's something I've been aware of that I'm working on. Is in daily life. It's very practical. It's not the age now when a lot of people can go on retreat in a cave for 3 years. So we try to do it in daily life, or a few hours here or maybe a weekend there. But modern life not too much suited to these long retreats. But
Mm,
one thing where the mastery really is, this is different than what we call like enlightened. I mean, it's much easier to be enlightened in a cave when there's nobody around,
true.
but can you be enlightened in the business world or in a relationship,
Mm, mm,
or that's where mastery is. Mastery is in a sense beyond enlightenment, or it incorporates enlightenment into daily life.
wow. Mm, mm,
So what I try to do in every interaction with another human being, to try to leave them feeling a little bit better than when I met them.
mm,
Like I go to the bank and I give a check to the teller and she's going to deposit it. I could just turn and leave. But I say, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. And I say, you're really a wonderful person, and you radiate joy. And they go, oh, really? That's how I feel good. I mean, it's so easy.
yeah,
Just took 15 seconds to say that, and they
yeah,
feel better. And then
that's
I
so
feel
true.
better.
That's so true.
And how many people do we talk to during the day?
Do you know,
And
Peter? They did research on what predicts long life,
yeah,
and out of all the things, giving up alcohol, giving up smoking, exercising, diet, out of all the things, the number one thing is exactly what you said. It's your social connections throughout the day and the little interactions you have, and where you're raising the spirit of people around you. That is the number one predictor of a long and happy life, more than anything else.
great, great.
That's fascinating.
That's wonderful.
How about selfishness? I think what I sense is the energy of selfishness a lot in society. I even feel it within myself. And I notice
Yeah.
how when I want to do something kind or helpful, then a part of me gets, but do I really want to do it? And is it really worth it? And I can feel the sense of selfishness. What can help us with selfishness in coming out of selfishness?
Well, I find, where it comes up for me is when I go to the store to buy some food, and, I'm in the express line. I have one thing. And then there's somebody got 20 things. They're not even supposed to be in the express line. So I start having judgments, thoughts. Plus, it's worse if I'm hungry. I want to get home, make lunch, or I have a meeting. And so then I think, there's nothing I can do about it. Just like, be here now. Maybe I'm supposed to talk to somebody behind me in line or something.
All
Or,
right.
what the thing is, what gets us always is habitual behavior, a habit.
Mm.
So, like, there's this habit in line to want things to go quickly and not let anybody push in front of us. That's a habit. It's around survival,
Mm.
self-preservation. That's what selfishness. I want to preserve myself. That
Mm.
it's kind of, at some point in life, you realize I've got to take responsibility and preserve myself, my family. It's all my.
Mm.
So if you can recognize the pattern and try something different that you haven't tried before, like, okay, I'm in line, it's taking longer than it should. Oh, then I realized the woman behind me only has two things. She wants to go in front of me, I think.
Mm.
So instead of trying to block her, saying, look, I only have one or two things too, and don't get any ideas about getting in front of me, I turned around and said, would you like to go in front of me?
Mm.
And then she said, oh, no, not really. And I said, oh, I thought maybe you were in the right, you had to get home because you had people coming to your house. And then we started a conversation. We
Mm.
had a beautiful interaction. So we wouldn't have had that if everything had gone quickly. I wouldn't have talked to her. Plus, it shifted something in me. Instead of, saying I'm first or I'm next or whatever, that doesn't have to be that way. That's not necessarily the way it should be. Try something different. Break the habitual patterns somehow.
That's right. I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing is, in meditation, what are my habits? What is my habitual behavior? What do I do in relationship? Or do I need to win every argument? Or, do I need to be right? Or something like that. Can I accept different points of view that are contradictory to mine? Do I feel threatened when I hear people make political statements? Does not, just to look at our habitual behavior and say, that is not mastery. I can change that. I can let go of that.
Beautiful. Yeah, I hear you.
And the violet fire, well, you can say, I call on the violet fire to dissolve and consume my habitual patterns, any negative habitual patterns. And frequently what will happen, sometimes the violet fire doesn't dissolve it immediately, but it makes you more aware of it. It intensifies it. So for the next week, you may see it amplified, just so you get it, you get
I
the
get it.
message.
I have a question about, there's one teaching which says that everything is happening the way it should. Everything is exactly, everything is perfection. Everything is, even though we may not understand it or like it, everything is unfolding exactly the way it should. And then there's another teaching which says that, well, use the power of your intention, use the power of your,
Yeah.
focus your mind on the best possible outcome and invoke that. So sometimes I wonder, with the violet flame, are we trying to make life better for ourselves, our idea of how life should be? So can you shed some light on this sense of, is everything happening the way it should, and we should try to use our power of intention to improve things?
Yeah, well, in a sense, both are true. Um, so, it's funny because, last week I was reading the news, in the morning. First thing I got up, I looked at the news, and it seemed like the world was in a very bad way. And I just was sort of overwhelmed, and I decided to take a hot bath.
Mm.
And which I don't normally do. So I got in the bathtub as hot as I could take, and I really relaxed. Then I felt Saint Germain come in, and he said, "Don't worry, Peter. Everything is unfolding according to plan." So then I relaxed. I started breathing again. Okay, but that doesn't mean I just go back to bed.
Mm.
That you still have to feel what it is that you have to do, like what your dharmic plan is. The great book on this is the Bhagavad Gita.
Right.
You know, Krishna is, they're on the battlefield, and Krishna says, I'm a pacifist. I don't want to hurt anybody. I see my
Arjun.
relative, you
Arjun
know,
says that. Yeah.
I mean, Arjuna says
Yeah.
that. And Krishna says, look, I've already determined who's going to die.
Yeah.
It's not your responsibility, but you have to do your duty. You have to fight, and you have to do a good job, you know? So I think that's an amazing book, the Gita, because I think that sort of answers the question. On one hand, it is sort of determined, but we still need to each do our duty and, you know, wake up. I think we are God's dream in a sense, you know? That God wanted to have this experience, so God created duality and, you know, let us experiment with it. And I don't really believe that it's all just unfolding from the beginning the way it was intended. But I do believe that, you know, one of the core practices of Buddhism is to accept that everything happening in our life is a result of our previous actions, you know? So given that fact, we came in with a plan for our lives, you know? That so everything is happening, like we chose our parents, we chose kind of the economic background, where we're going to be born, all of that, and the major people that we're going to meet in our lives, you know. I feel that when I was born, you know, over 70 years ago, it was destined that you and I would have this conversation at this time. I think that's absolutely determined, that that was part of it. But we had to exercise free will to make it happen, you know?
True.
Like you asked me if I wanted to do it, then I tuned in a little bit, I meditated on it, I felt yes, then I told you, and then you say what day, what time, so on. So we had to exercise our free will, you know? So
I also want some input on you on, because this is where, since I know that people have their free will, I mean, there was a time when I was much more, I don't know, forceful is the word, but I was much more encouraging of people. Okay, meditate and, you know, get out of your old habits and, you know, break the patterns. And then somewhere along the way, I think I became more mellow and I say, you know, everyone's on their own path. One doesn't have to push so much, and let them figure it out in their own time. They're going to figure it out. So I sometimes wonder, like I'm also running this year-long course and I'm going to be sharing this video. And I sometimes wonder, to what extent should I encourage and push people to, you know, rise up to be their best selves, or at least my idea of their best selves? And to what extent should I just trust that they will, at the right time, they will do what they need to do?
well, I go through this myself, you know. You know who Neem Karoli Baba was, you know?
Yes.
I mean, his picture is right up there. I have him on the wall. I
Oh,
don't know if you can
beautiful,
see.
Babaji.
Yeah, I put him up there because, you know, I spent a lot of time with him in 1970, 71, and I didn't really relate to him because, you know, he was this fat guy, almost naked in a blanket. He didn't give any teachings, really, just said, love people and feed them. And I kept thinking, what am I doing here? You know, he hardly talked to me even. Then when I'm in a new house now, I'm in a cabin out in the forest, you know, and a woman knew nothing about him. She said, I see this guy sitting in your chair, big fat guy with this blanket, you know, and then every now and then he just shows up, you know, and I feel him even come through me. And he's not, well, he did tell me, I want you to stay in your body. That was very clear. On my birthday, he came to me in a dream. But I think his lesson is kind of just chill out, you know? That, you know, if somebody needs something, they will ask you, you know, but, you know, I mean, I get calls from a lot of people. They've done some practice for 30, 40 years, and it hasn't gotten them anywhere. Like some Tibetan Buddhist, he's done all the Nundro, taken every different empowerment you can think of, and still doesn't feel enlightened. It's just doing one practice after another, you know? Or I have some ascended master people, they're like worshiping the ascended masters, their pictures, you know, they have them on the wall and they're they're doing all the affirmations. And after 40 years, like none of their friends that are doing these practices have ascended, and they haven't met any ascended masters. And then they go, what have I done with my life? I've been doing this practice and I haven't got anywhere.
True.
So when those people come to me, I'd say, look, why don't you just do this Vipassana? And sometimes they go, oh, I'll go nuts if I do that. Then I say, well, how about the Vajra Guru mantra, which I have. It's funny, I have on my wall up there.
That's
it's in a
the
tap.
Om Ahong Vajra Guru
Vajra,
Mani Padme Hong.
no. Om Ahung Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Hung.
Padma Siddhi Hong. Yeah, this is Padma Sambhava's mantra.
Yeah. He said that's the fastest way to enlightenment. Of course, he said that 1,200 years ago. And I have it in silk above my chair. Not one person that has come here has asked what that is, you know?
Right. You know,
So,
when I went to Bhutan, this mantra just started automatically. I was in Bhutan, and the mantra just kept going on and on and on. And they say that Padma Sambhava was in Bhutan.
yeah, it's probably some past life when
I think so. It just came up. It just kept, and I just constantly, I had mantras going on while I was in Bhutan, out of nowhere. I'm not such a big mantra. I do mantras sometimes, but this was like constant. All the time there were mantras going on. Like the field.
The problem is thinking too much. You know, like this lady, I gave her the Vajra Guru mantra. Then she wants to know what each syllable means and get a picture of it. And no, you're analyzing it again. Yeah. See, with the I am affirmations, then people start thinking, or, you know, they want the mind, you know, like the ego says, you want to play this spiritual game, I can play that, you know?
Yeah.
Then you're back where you started, you know? So, you know, I had an experience. If somebody says, when was your first enlightenment experience? It was shoveling manure in a barn. I was shoveling manure for 2 days, you know. In the middle of the second day, I don't remember exactly, it's a long time ago, I mean 60 years, 50 years ago, I went into a state of timeless awareness. There was no self, no Peter, no body, just light and bliss, which you call Satchitananda, you know. But there was no self even experiencing it. And I don't know how long I was there, but after a while I came back in my body. The pitchfork was still in the air. And I thought, you know, you could try to make that happen for a lifetime and it would never happen. And it happened just because, you know, any kind of repetitive thing. I was just doing the shoveling, and that was like the Vipassana, observing the in-breath and the out-breath. You know, could be washing dishes, or some people doing prostrations. You know, you do 100,000 prostrations. You might get enlightened doing that, but something to slow down the mind. You know,
they say that Leo Tolstoy had that experience cutting maize in the field, and
really?
he had timeless expansion. Yeah, they said he had this expansion. And then he tried to get back to it, and he cut acres and acres of crop, but he never really got back to it. It was like it just happened. He got into that samadhi state when he was doing it one day.
That's great. I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
That's the story about Leo Tolstoy.
Jeez, that's great. Yeah, so I think people should have some kind of core practice. And if you don't have the time for that, let's say you're a parent and you have children, you know, young children, at least you can dedicate your actions for the benefit of all beings. You know, that's what Tantra is, you know, you make your life the path, you know, that my child is the baby Krishna, and what I do for this child is benefiting all children, you know.
That's beautiful.
So
we shouldn't feel a sense that, oh, I'm only on the householder path and I can't do this. Because you're taking care of your child like that is baby Krishna. And that changes everything.
The householder path, I think, is actually maybe the fastest way to be become a master, you know. Like, you know, Yogananda was not a householder, but his guru and his guru's guru were householders, you know. And, you know, they say, if you think you're enlightened, get in a relationship, you know? So, you know, it constantly showing you where you've got something to work on. It could be,
Exactly.
that's your guru right there,
That's so true.
So
So I'm just feeling a lot of stillness, and we
yeah,
began this conversation with the violet flame. So maybe you can just one more time talk about people
yeah.
who've never experienced this before. They don't know what it's about. How can they bring the violet flame, the violet presence into their life, and practical way that they can do that? I think that will be a great way to conclude this
Well,
conversation.
one is to have surround yourself with things that are violet,
Okay.
an amethyst or even violet glass or
Okay.
violet shirt. Like I've got a little
Yeah.
turtleneck sweater, violet. So to be thinking about it and just imagine it around you
Mm,
and ask the masters to intensify it. It takes a little
yeah.
bit of faith there,
Yeah.
you know, but
Beautiful.
again, ask Saint Germain, ask the masters to help you. And if you use it for other people, like healing, if someone's sick, say, imagine that person in a tube of violet and ask Saint Germain to send the violet light to them. That would be good.
That's great. A lot of
I was,
people I've been sharing this month, I've been sharing the violet flame and practices connected to it. And some of the people are saying that they're seeing violet everywhere. After they do the practice, they see more
yeah.
violets wherever they go. Mm.
Yeah, well, you can say when you have a group of people in the room,
Yeah,
let us invoke the violet flame to be with us.
yeah.
And as people get still, like I like to have people meditate with the eyes open, maybe
Mm,
looking down a little bit at the floor and just feeling the light within expand, and
mm,
just say, imagine a great amethyst in your heart. And
mm,
inside that amethyst is the sun. And that is sending violet light out into the room. And you get 20 people in the room, you can feel it. You can feel it, and some people even see it then.
wow.
So I was going to say something that, my experience doing workshops, I felt like I got more out of the workshops, or as much than anybody there. Because what happens is you are holding a focus there.
That's true.
And if, when you sit down in the chair in front of the group, you say, I am the master presence,
Mm,
I call on the ascended masters, come through me to bless these people.
mm,
And they are actually, maybe they're not thinking it, but they're seeing you as the master. See, like they hold you as the guru. The guru is everywhere, but when you sit at someone's feet and you ask for teachings, you're invoking the divine guru, So they are invoking your guru self, you
mm,
know?
mm.
So it's a great path for you as well as for them.
Yes. Yeah.
What I would do sometimes at the end of a workshop, I would ask everyone come up and sit in my chair
Ah,
and give
so nice.
everyone a blessing
That's
and ask
beautiful.
everyone to bless them. See, that's the master, and feel what it feels like.
Beautiful.
And then I
I,
would say, who's ever sitting in front, I am the master presence blessing you.
that's
And,
lovely.
hold up your hand like this. And then, yeah. And people will get so energized when they sit up in front of the group. Some people just,
Exactly.
that is like very high experience for them. And then I ask everyone, visualize the master is sitting in that chair. Visualize Jesus is sitting there now. Or, and then also before, like you say, a joy shop, ask people to invoke the divine guru or the ascended masters to come forth, that they receive what they need.
Exactly. We
And
do a
then,
practice called I invite into the space, and we invite various energies and various masters when we start a program. We often do that.
hmm,
Amazing.
yeah.
Lovely. Any final thoughts or blessings before we end?
No,
Fantastic, fantastic, great. I think people are gonna really be so happy to go through your work and your material. And I think it's gonna this video as well as your other work is going to be a powerful light. So through the
oh,
power of the
yours
violet
too.
flame, through the power of the violet flame and
Yeah.
Saint Germain and all the other masters, wishing you a long and healthy life And may you continue to radiate blessings for all of us.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.